One. Hopefully we are live. I'm just going to check YouTube really quick just to make sure, because last time we were not live. Yes, we're live. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
It's working for you?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Let's start it off. So, hey everyone, welcome to the Roundtable with Vienna Whyte, Season 1, Episode 70. I'm your host, Millie Rouge, from the band Vienna Whyte, here in Edmonton, Canada. This Roundtable is a YEG music production. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host for today, Marissa Kay, who makes up the other half of our band. Marissa, can you start off by introducing all of our guests we have on the show today?
Yes. So we have Dale from Broken Hands, who is from Canterbury, Kent, UK.
100%. That's it. That's me. Hello. How's it going?
We have Trevor from Young Planetary from Boise, Idaho.
Hello.
We have Brenda Nicole Moorer from Atlanta, Georgia. And Matt Parrish from Market Junction from Houston, Texas.
What's up, everybody?
Awesome.
So welcome.
Welcome to the show. So what I quickly want to do, we've kind of all chatted a little bit already. So I want to chat about the musical journeys of each of you individually, whether that be your band or kind of your artist brand. So I want to learn more because we've kind of met you guys really briefly, but I want to know more about yourselves and what you guys do in your band and what your band sounds like and what you guys do. So why don't we start it off with Dale? Can you tell us a little bit more about your band and your musical journey?
Yeah. So we're a 5-piece rock band from England, which is probably an old familiar story that we've been in music, history has known about. I'm the singer. My brother's a drummer, and the guitarist Dave and Jamie and our bass player Tom. We all grew up together pretty much. Went to school. Didn't go to university. We pretty much were just like roadies for other people for ages, just sort of bummed around, and then started running club night, and sort of because there wasn't like where we live is so close to London, it's not really a touring place. Or something. It's not a touring town, I guess, or city, because like London's sort of like this gravitational pull on the whole area, so everyone just goes that way. So we started running a club night, and the band sort of started by us putting ourselves in the bill. So we just ran a club night so we could put on gigs basically, and then from there it just spiraled more and more and more. Since then we signed to Atlantic Records last year, or like 2 years ago even, and then have been like toured the States the first time last year, done a lot of tour around Europe, been lucky enough to support and play with some other people, and are about to release our second album. So that's a synopsis of how we got to it.
Very cool. Well, thank you for being a part of your spokesperson for your band today.
That's right.
Now, Brenda, can you tell us about your musical journey and kind of where you're at with your music career?
Yeah, I've been singing since forever. I just put out my third full-length record and have one EP out. I'm on Rope-A-Dope Records, which is based out of Brooklyn, New Jersey, kind of, but mostly Brooklyn. I do kind of like a fusion of jazz, folk, soul. It's kind of its own thing. It's not necessarily popular music, but we have fun doing it. There's 5 members in my band, and the band is just my name. And we're supposed to be touring right now, actually, but it got pushed to March. So we'll be touring up the East Coast of the US in March, and hopefully get over to the UK at some point. The producer,
Come.
I would love to, yeah. The producer for the latest record is based out of London, Troy Miller. So we're hoping to get over there and do some stuff with Metropole Orkfest and stuff. So.
It's fantastic. I love that music genre. That's like the coolest thing I've ever heard. So I'm gonna have to explore it more and see if there's some more artists kind of similar, because that sounds really interesting. So Young Planetary, can you kind of tell me about your band and what you guys do as your musical journey and how it's been so far for you guys?
Yeah, so it started off as like a solo project back in like 2013 when my old like crummy pop punk band broke up and I wasn't, done playing music. So I did that whole like acoustic pop punky sort of thing that you saw back in the, 2013 era.
Yes.
And it's just been kind of like grooving since then. I've been in like other bands since, but this one has just kind of stuck around mostly because since it's mostly driven by me, I can kind of pick it up and drop it whenever I want.
Right.
There's been like several different iterations of the group itself, but the dudes that are in it now are kind of like the mainstays that are going to stick around for a while. So yeah, we were supposed to go on tour in May, but COVID messed all that up. So now we're just kind of cooling it, seeing what happens. And we just dropped an EP on Friday through our label Hidden Home Records, based out of, I guess he's based out of New York now. Yeah, just a homie of mine that I've toured with in the past. And yeah, now we're just trying to get our name out there as best as possible without going on the road, even though I would much rather be in the van right now.
Yeah.
More so than anything. This
Yeah.
is, can I curse? Are we allowed to curse?
Oh yeah. That's
Oh,
fine.
it's fine. Go for it.
Yeah, being stuck at home is fucking bullshit. It sucks. It sucks. Yeah,
Yes,
so
we're with you.
yeah, we're just waiting to kind of see what happens, and hopefully, depending on how next year goes, we can get on the road. We'll
Yeah,
see.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a thought that a lot of people are going through, and I like that you asked if you could swear, and then you're like, yeah, that's exactly how it feels, because that's internally what goes through my head every single day is that. So
Word.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, can you finish it off by telling us a little bit about your band and what you guys do and how your musical journey and careers have been so far?
Sure. So we're, I guess, what you would call a folk Americana country band from Houston, Texas, and we've been playing together for about 9 years. There's 4 of us, 3 original members, and then the drummer who joined us he's been with us for about 3 years, Michael. But Justin Lofton and myself, we're like the founding members. He's the guitar player, co-writer. Taylor Hilliard plays bass. Michael Blattell plays drums, and we regionally, just kind of locally, started playing and didn't really have aspirations of doing anything with it other than just being weekend warriors. And the more we did it, the more we loved it. And we started to gain a following locally. And we're like, well, what would it look like if we tried to push this thing further? And so we've remained independent on purpose and tried to operate it like a business. And so we just released our 3rd full-length record. And we hired out help with publicity and radio promotion and all that stuff, but had to kind of make the decision of whether or not we were going to release in the middle of the pandemic, and we decided to go for it. And but it has been.
I feel that, dude.
We did a live stream for the record release a couple nights ago, and it's like, man, it's so much more fun to play to a live audience, But we're trying to deal with that part of it, but it's been okay so far.
Yeah, I think everyone's been definitely, and this is something I didn't mention in any of the questions I have prepared, but I think a lot of artists have been trying to figure out if it's the right time to still release music. And I think it's really tough internally for a lot of us. We don't really know if it feels appropriate, but I think we have been seeing, obviously, you guys have obviously all released your albums and your projects. So we have been seeing artists that have continued to do so. So I think it's important because I think like our audience and people at home that aren't musicians and people that are watching Netflix, for example, they need their new content. We can't just be sitting here in limbo for like months and months and months just waiting for the arts, right? So I think now it's a beautiful time where we can really appreciate the arts, especially. So thank you everyone for sharing about your journeys. It's so cool to hear kind of the background of where your bands kind of started and where your projects kind of evolved from. So our topic of the day, for those of you on Reddit or Twitch or YouTube that don't know what we're talking about, we are going to be chatting about releasing an album/EP and kind of just giving everyone's advice and kind of tips on how they've done so far. So my first kind of question that we have here, first of all, congrats on everyone for releasing your albums and EPs. That's a very big step. I want to know and anyone who wants to start off, I just want to know what the inspiration was behind everyone's current album or EP that has recently been released. What was the inspiration behind it?
Who wants to go first?
I'll start.
Go for it.
So our record's called Locations I Can't Place. It's basically about like the distance and weirdness that you experience like as you get older, like primarily through like your 20s. Like I just turned 30 what is it, August? So I turned 30 in June. So I kind of crossed this little slump or hump, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, the record's just a lot about like growing up and figuring out where you are and wondering how you got to the places that you're at. And yeah, it took about, I mean, it was a weird like 3-year long process somehow, just with life and how crazy it gets. So by the time it came out, all of us were like different, older, more mature people. So yeah, they kind of grew up with us over the last few years. So yeah, it's basically just about that.
That's really interesting, actually, because Marissa and I have been going through that process of like, we're both in our, 25 and up basically, but we're trying to deal with that process of what it's like to grow old. And I think that's such an interesting topic because I don't think it's talked about really enough because it's such a unique experience. It's quite hard to talk about because it's a part of life, but it's definitely difficult, I think, to process. But
yeah, I mean, I don't want to mention how many gray hairs I have coming in. That's,
yeah,
it's ferocious. That's why I have a hat on. It's
at least you
good.
still have hair though.
I do.
That's the
I'm
good thing.
thankful for that. That's great. I will continue having hair.
Yes.
And that is the thing I'm most looking forward to as I get older, I think.
So like, I turned 30 this year as well. But,
oh hell yeah!
Do you think it's going to change your outlook on how you're going to make music going forward? I know it's a decade, and it's just a number, but all that sort of stuff. But do you think it's going to change your outlook? It's definitely changed ours as a band. Anyway, we're definitely starting to feel different about what we kind of want to do with it and the records we want to make. You know what I mean?
Right.
Do you think so?
Yeah. I mean, like I know that it's going to hurt a lot more to sleep on a hardwood floor than it did when I was in my early 20s. So like, but other than that, I mean, I still feel like, I still feel in it, my inner punk rocker is still like fighting on and in it. But, there is also that level of like, oh shit, well, I'm getting older. Like I need to figure out something else to do that isn't music too. And like kind of like a more actual like established career path. Because yeah, I mean, it, as you get older, you have to kind of figure out those things. And I have like a dog and bills and all that shit. So, so yeah, I'm not this, responsibility less, 20 something anymore. So I have to kind of be a little bit more calculated, a little bit more put together, I guess. But other than that, I think the goals and aspirations are still pretty much the same. It's just the execution that is kind of a little bit different now.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So Brenda, what was kind of your inspiration behind your latest project? I was looking at your album cover and it was really, really, really unique and really colorful and beautiful. So what was your inspiration behind it?
So the record is called Marrow. We started it about 2 years ago. And it's very similar to what you were just saying. It's the point of it is figuring out who you are, finding your core, figuring out your purpose in life. And I think at the time I was trying to explore what that was for myself. I had decided to leave my day job and do my art full time. So it's been 2 full years of just doing music full time and acting too. But it's just kind of a scary thing when you put all your eggs in one basket. And so it was kind of just me writing about figuring out the path that you're supposed to take, and also like encouraging other people and encouraging myself that if your heart is in the right place, no matter what path you take, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. So marrow, we started calling it marrow from bone marrow, just kind of like the core of your cells, red blood cells in your body. It was like the most grounded thing we could think of. And so it just kind of stuck. And so marrow is what it is.
I like that. That's cool. Very
That's
scientific.
a really cool way of like looking at it. Yeah. Because like marrow's like one of the most important things we could even like donate as a body part too, which is that's so cool. That's like a very fundamental thing to like a very fundamental like metaphor. I really like that.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So what about you, Matt? With your band, what was kind of the inspiration behind your recent release?
It was interesting because we were the radio folks that we were working with and our management at the time were like, hey, it's time for you to release new music. And we were in Texas. There's this they call it a Texas country scene, and it's a very regional, robust touring radio type scene, and there was it was very accessible, and so we're like, well, we want to try to fit into that. And so we had released a couple of singles that we thought would fit into that mold, and they did okay, but it caused us to not be excited about making music anymore. We were like trying to force ourselves into this scene, and so I had gotten the call from management, and then like a couple hours later, I got a call from our radio promoter, and it was like, hey, now's the time. So I called Justin, and I was like, hey, I guess it's time for us to make a record. And neither one of us were excited about it. And so we talked for about an hour and a half that day on the phone, and we ended up going, look, let's make a record we want to make and just be damned with the rest of it. Let's not try to fit into any box. Let's just do it. If it doesn't inspire us, we're not going to track it. And so we actually started tracking the record, and then pulled the plug, trashed it, and went back and redid it. And we took full control of it. We were painstakingly involved in every aspect of it. And
That's
and
so
we
dope.
didn't have all the songs when we started. We had like 4 or 5 songs. We finished writing the record while we were recording it, and it ended up being kind of a themed process. So I'm maybe the oldest one in the group. I'm 37, and I've got 4 kids, and I've got twin boys from my first wife, and then me and my wife now have 2 young kids. And so drawing on the experience of the divorce that happened years ago, and the traveling that we've done through different stages of life with the band and different jobs we've had, we put together like a thematic record of like, you tried to take this character that we invented and take him through one heartbreak and kind of his journey through that. And that's why the record's called Bridges, and that's why it's a title track. And so it's the only record we've ever made that I feel like there weren't excuses taped to it. Sometimes you make a record and you're like, well, this didn't turn out just right, or it's like, no, we made sure that wasn't going to happen. So we are super proud of it. And but it took us 18 months, to track.
I feel that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and sometimes you want to put your best foot forward as much as you can, but we actually talk about this as a band ourselves with our manager, is like, done is better than perfect. Like sometimes when it comes to that, like if you spend forever working on a song or working on a concept, it's just never going to come out. Like you're always going to find something wrong with it.
Right.
I like that idea of no excuses attached to it. Which actually leads me into my question, which is, in your opinion, what's the most difficult thing about releasing an album? I mean, I'm sure I can think of a couple things myself, but but in your guys' opinion, what's like the hardest thing about releasing an album?
Well,
someone go first.
You're all like, I want to talk so badly.
well, it's sort of. Do you want me to go? Have a go? Should I have a go?
It's up to you.
You go for it.
This record for us it was actually finished over 2 years ago. So it's been in the making for like 4 or 5 years. So the toughest thing for us has actually literally been putting it out. But it's just the timing of everything. And I know you spoke about like, oh, it's good to be releasing records in lockdown. In a way, this has been the perfect time for us because of like that we have to. If we don't do it now, then when we come out of this, hopefully, and everyone in the world and live music goes back, we can start on a fresh slate with new music and all be in real time for the first time in ages, as opposed to sat with something in the bag for a long time. So for us, it's literally just having all of the different pieces. You're saying then about done is better than perfect. I think that's something that happens with the team of people you look around it. Like you were saying, Matt, when you've got like a team of people that are trying to facilitate your release, or it's managers, radio, promo, and you can always wait for the perfect time. But actually, is there such a thing? It's like there's so much chance after a certain point anyway. So,
I think the process of just letting go and just being like, okay, I have to stop with it now and just let it be. And I think the best advice because I think someone's always having to convince me to like, okay, Brenda, like be done with it now. Like you've done it.
Tell me about it.
Yeah,
I feel that.
Best advice that I got was saying like when you record a record, it's just a snapshot in time. You're always going to be growing, and you're going to continuously develop and get better and get to different places and discover new things. And if you keep trying to do that before you put out a record, you're never going to put it out. So you got to like put it out in as like a documentation of this time of who you are in this moment, and then let it go. So yeah, let it go. It's hard to do, but it makes sense.
Yeah,
but it is.
I like that idea of your record and your music being a snapshot of where you are, because I say that all the time. So it's so cool that you brought that up. That it's like, yeah, it's totally just like a snapshot of where you are, and it's as you kind of go through your anthology or discography of music, you can kind of see how you change and develop over time. And I think that's really cool. If you stay the same, I feel like you're not doing yourself any good as an artist, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely as well, Brenda, like it can be harmful actually after a couple of like years. Like especially as a group of people, you're like kind of start getting into arguments about things that if you just put it out, or like discussions, shall we say, about things that if we just put it out would never have even happened. Do you know what I mean? So like I think you bang on the money there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other hard thing too, of like working with a band versus being a solo artist. I feel like if you're a solo artist, you can just, you know, work with your band and hire your band and be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And then they do get a say, but it's more of just like what you want. But versus as a band, you all have an equal say. So it makes it, sometimes it can make it harder to put out music as a band, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult to get everyone to like agree and get everyone on the same page. I mean, we were kind of in a similar boat as, you know, my homie in the UK over there, where, you know, we had these songs written and like ready to rock for so long, but just because of different life things and, you know, just, you know, how distracted you can get by everything else, you have like this batch of like stuff that you really want to get out there into the world, but you have to kind of like wait for the sort of stars to align before you can actually like get it out there. Because I mean, what happened is that we started with like half of the songs that are on this current EP. We started with like a 10 song release. This was probably like 2 or so, or maybe 3 years ago at this point. And we had all 10 songs tracked, ready to go. But then we had this huge falling out with the dude that we recorded with. So we scrapped the entire record.
Wow.
And that seems like, talking about getting your band to agree on something. Everyone was very mad at me that I decided they were not about it. I just had to be like, look guys, we're just going to scrap the whole thing. And that's what it took so long to get this current one done, especially because, you know, I moved from Boise up to Seattle for a little bit. So that set us back another year, even though I recorded most of the record there. But because we weren't in close proximity, that delayed us even more. But then once I came back to Boise, we kind of like put it all together. So I would say the anticipation of putting it out is really difficult, because we've had our masters back since probably right before quarantine. So I've just been like jamming to our record since March and like waiting for people to listen to it. So that's hard. And the other component of it that I think is difficult is the financial aspect of it. Like, I don't know how you guys are like paying for your music, but I mean, I'm like picking up extra shifts. I'm like, you know, selling my shit to, you know, pay for studio time. So I think that's also another thing that's hard, especially as like an independent artist, or even, you know, an artist working with the label. Is just like the financial like aspect of it is difficult.
Sure. I will say my background before I was doing music full time was working in nonprofits in the art side of things, so for theaters and music venue, like performance music venues and things like that. So going into this record, I just kept thinking like, why put all this money into this record when I know I'm probably not going to make it all back? Like, I'm going to spend all this money.
You'll never make it back. It's gone.
I'm
the
like,
money's
I
gone.
hope I make it back, but you know, who knows?
All of us are like, no.
So what I did was think about it like I was a nonprofit. So I got myself fiscally sponsored through a company called Fractured Atlas. And then I did crowdfunding, but instead of normal crowdfunding, it was like donations. So anyone who contributed to the record, they got their like level of, you get the CD, you get a concert ticket, all that, but it was tax deductible for them to send me money. And then
that's cool.
got a grant that would match all of my donations dollar for dollar. So I ended up raising
pretty good, isn't it?
$15,000 in a month.
Yeah.
And I think like more artists should know about this model, because it is like in classical music they do this a lot, and a lot in jazz, but it could work for any kind of music. And that's how I raised.
Yeah, I'm gonna need like a phone number or an email address to make that happen, because you're so much smarter than I am. Gee, that's embarrassing.
Well, I think that's a really smart way of looking at it, as like looking at yourself not as like a not-for-profit business. I think that's so smart, and I can't believe I never thought of that. I feel so stupid for not thinking of that. That's so smart.
It's a weird concept, because I think most of the time when we think nonprofit, we think, oh, that means you don't make money. But like, I feel like for what we do as arts, like if it's a dance company or it's a theater company or performance venue, they work as nonprofits, because you are essentially giving the people in the community something to listen to or to see or to consume art wise, and in return we need their support. Like we can't exist as artists if they don't support us. So I'm not technically a nonprofit, but what you can do is act as if you are a nonprofit, so you get to benefit without actually being a nonprofit. And I also got my tour funded for like $15,000.
Wow,
that's amazing.
Good Lord.
That's incredible.
You've been a very busy person.
Yeah.
I will say it's a lot of back end work. There's a lot of grant writing involved, that kind of stuff. But it's worth it. It's worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, we have an artist here in Edmonton who did something very similar to what you did, where he released an album and he had all these perks. Like if you donate this amount, you get a shirt, a CD, an EP, you get this. So I think that's really great. But the thing, and he actually had a lot of success with that. That I think he called it like I think he went along the lines of Kickstarter, but I think it is a lot of work though. That's the thing. It sounds almost easier than it is, but it is a lot of dedication and like planning. So I think as easy as we think it sounds, it is quite difficult to get through that too, right? Just as hard as releasing an album the regular way, it's also hard as well. So I actually want to shift our conversation to talk about streaming. So as we're talking about albums and album releasing, with the world of streaming being the new norm compared to when it used to be making CDs and selling our CDs, what are your opinions on music albums being released majority by streaming services now, and how our audience is listening just by streaming? What do you guys kind of think about this? Do you prefer it? Do you like it? Do you wish things could go back to the way they used to be? What's your kind of thoughts on that?
I'll say that it's been, we were going to release digital only and then vinyl. We were going to do vinyl and then just no CDs, right? But we had to print CDs because like the folk Americana radio market, a lot of those DJs still require you to ship them a physical CD. Yeah. So we printed like a small number of CDs, and it's been like the thing we're selling the most in
Same. Weird thing.
I don't know where I can't quite put my finger on it, because I'm like, I thought nobody listened to CDs anymore. Like my truck doesn't even have a CD player anymore.
Yeah.
That's nuts. You must have a nice truck.
I was told that was weird for still listening to CDs, but now it's like a thing. I'm so confused.
It's trendy.
Like, look, it's literally just like, look, they just sit in people's houses. It's like...
I have a whole shelf. You guys can't see, but I have a whole shelf just like full of CDs on the side here that you can't see. It's ridiculous, but I think that's a really good point that you make though, Matt, because I feel like nowadays with as much streaming as we have and buying stuff online, sometimes people want that physical thing that they can hold in their hands and to sit down and just listen to one CD,
Well, and I
think
think
that-
from like a being on tour perspective too, like if they walk up to your merch table and you're like, oh, like check us out on Spotify, they're like they might, but if you can put like a CD in their hand or just whatever else like physical media you can give to them, I think it definitely increases your chances of like being retained by that person, because
I
like
agree with that.
I mean, I tell people to check us out on Spotify all the time. Like now that our record's out, like they have no excuse not to.
Yeah.
And like motherfuckers still don't. So like
They're
if I had like literally everywhere. I'm like, just look it up. They're like, it's too much work. I'll do it later. I'm like, okay. But if I had like something to hand to them, it might, they would just be able to see it and be like, oh, cool. I need to make sure to like follow them or like check them out on whatever. But I think
that
it's
physical reminder.
Yeah, and I think just again, like from like a touring perspective, like the more stuff you have on your table, quote unquote, to like sell to people or give to people, whatever, I think it just increases your chances of making more money and being able to stay out on the road longer than if you were just a band that like went on tour with like a couple t-shirts,
Right.
Yeah.
We me and the boys were talking about this the other day. The one thing I will say about streaming is that I remember everyone would have been the same mistakes when MySpace kicked into the world of the internet, and you'd be able to stream your song on MySpace. It might have been a European thing, I don't know, I'm not sure.
Oh no, that was a thing.
It was a big deal in the States.
Oh yeah.
I mean, from the way
MySpace
back
was heavy, dude.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, and it's felt ever since then. That was around the same time we started getting into wanting to be in a band and making music. That the medium of streaming has just constantly evolved. And me and the boys get tired of chasing the different mediums of social media things. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the things that I definitely say has worn me down.
So annoying.
I love the convenience of streaming, and actually it is in my life. But as an artist, I hate chasing the platform. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like forever. That's something that I definitely think I don't like about it, but I do think it's great in the respect that, like, like just when get your information of like your metadata and stuff, like someone in like El Salvador is listening to your song,
right?
That's quite cool, because I guess I'd never know that if it wasn't, for a lot of the streaming services. So I tried to balance it out without getting too annoyed.
Yeah, I also think if Spotify is listening, if they paid more, paid artists more to be streamed, I think that would also help increase its like value for people like us that are like in bands and in the van and like trying really hard to like make it work. If our song got streamed 1,000 times and we got 50 cents as opposed to like 0.00032 or whatever it is right now, then we could actually utilize that money to continue our projects. I think that would also make it a little bit like I would be a little bit more stoked on it, like stoked on it if I knew that it was actual like money in my pocket. But like when we get our payout monthly from our label, it's like it's laughable. I'm like, cool, dude, I can't even buy like a chicken sandwich with this.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up too, because that's not just a problem for small artists. Like that's a thing for even we talked about this the other day on our Morning Brew show, where we were talking about Spotify, and there was an article that was shared. I think it was it was like Bruno Mars or Pharrell Williams. Or no, that's his name, right?
Bruno Mars,
Bruno, So they were talking about how their songs, like "Happy" by Pharrell, was like the most played song on Spotify, and he only made like a couple $1,000s from it, from like the millions and millions of streams that he got.
Yeah,
and it's like,
it's infuriating, really.
Yeah,
Do you know, it's really weird though. I had like loads of different. I had different numbers from loads of different people in different parts of the industry, up and down the ladder of success. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'm kicking it. Just like made $5,000 from 1 million streams or something. I was like, what? And I was like, oh, wait. Yeah, and then other people are like, oh, I can't do this. It's like this still like even though it's all like digitalized and logged, it's the shadiness of the music industry still exists. It's all there. Still. You know what I mean? Like the corridors and bad handshakes are all there. I still can never add it up. I don't know why it's like that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, is that some people feel that music just in general has kind of gone down in value because of streaming. Because it's so easy and so attainable to get. It's that instant gratification of, I can just listen to that song anytime, versus like, back in the 90s or early 80s is where you have to like wait for that song to come on the radio so you could like take out your Casio and like record it. Yeah. So it's like a whole different world now. And I think that we have to constantly evolve and constantly figure out how to generate value for our music, which sucks, because it seems like it would just inherently have value, but I think that's one of the frustrating things
We
is
just
for us artists is
we just completely had to change our outlook on it though, especially in the UK, because like we like don't pay necessarily as well, especially at grassroots in the UK. It's really like on top of each other and tight knit. I know this music's hard to get going the tour anyway, but we just have to stop thinking of like the actual physical money that comes from selling records. Just be like, it's just promotion to get people to a show, and we just look at like our fees now. We just that's how sad is that? You've just written that off.
Yeah,
we just sort of like. We just completely written it off, which I might make it. I mean, Brenda and Matt, it sounds like you've been doing some amazing things like financing yourself and stuff, but we just had to just stop thinking like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought we just started feeling better.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. Like,
I think it's also
weird.
made artists focus now more on touring and our merchandise, and now that's literally the only ways that we make money now.
The only way. Yeah.
Which is so interesting. Even for big celebrities that are signed to labels, it's the same thing. Like they make most amount of money on their merch and their tour, which I understand, but I think that's the biggest change we've had to adjust to is like, oh, it's no longer about my music. It's about my cool dad hat that I'm trying to sell to some 20-year-old dude and hoping to God he'll love it. Like, I think it's a weird adjustment. It's really strange, but
yeah.
Well, I remember I watched this interview with Dave Grohl where he was talking about, like, it's a standard like interviewer type question. It was like, what advice would you give to young bands? And his advice was to like be as kick-ass live as possible. And I think these days it's like it's such a weird like new way of looking at it, especially with like the internet being such a huge presence in our lives. But like it's also still this like really old school way of having to do it, where like you have to tour, you have to sell merch, you like you have to be super good live, like no matter you can, and I've had so many like friends of mine fall into the trap of like paying all these people to like help get them more streams on whatever or help get their name into this and this. Then I'm like, you guys aren't even good live though. Like that's kind of like if you guys put on a kick-ass show, like more people might be into you. But it's such it's just a weird like dichotomy of like how it was done before, like with the bands in like the 60s and 70s. And like that is still so much a huge part of it. Like you can pay tens of thousands for a marketing budget, but you'll still be like living in your mom's basement. No
Actually,
matter what.
That's a good point that you bring up, because like as you mentioned, things constantly change in marketing and changing the way that you promote your music, especially like at live shows and stuff. Do you guys think that artists should release singles every now and then, like between releasing albums, or do you think that releasing albums is still the way to go?
I think go for it, man.
Well, I think content creation is more important than ever now. I think like what you guys are doing with the round table there's like if you release a record every 2 years, it's so expensive to do that, but it's like you got to find a way in the meantime to stay relevant, and that's really it's either through singles or it's through podcasts or whatever the case may be,
Right. Yeah, I think like more music is better than no music, I suppose. But I would say that because of you're competing with everyone around you, whether or not you want to look at it as like a competition or not, like
trying to stand out.
Like your shit has to be banging. Like if you're gonna be putting out singles and like shorter play things like EPs or whatever, like that shit better be good. Like it has to be like you have to make sure it's like really good, because you're not. I mean the chance that you'll have to like afford to put out a full length in a studio with a producer, all that kind of stuff, like diminishes by the day. I mean, it's so expensive to like get into the studio. So like, I think that, putting out music and, singles and stuff like that is really important, but I think you have to really exercise your strengths as a songwriter and make sure that whatever you put out is like really good. Like not even, like quality, and also just the quality of like the songwriting itself, but also quality of the production too. Like it has to be like, Would you guys at all, would you agree like with the fact that it's genre specific as well, maybe? Like how you go about this now?
I
like
think
other
so,
genres
actually.
are moving in different spaces and directions and stuff. Like
I think that's actually a really good point that you bring up, Dale, because I've noticed in a lot of pop music, and especially through TikTok, I've noticed this, like Gen Z's sometimes almost like when songs are like really poorly produced, like when they're through an iPhone, sometimes those songs will blow up more than this like professionally produced metal song. So I think you actually bring up a super great point that I do think it matters what genre you're in, right?
Mm.
I don't know if you
Because
guys
even
have
just
experienced
like
that.
in this conversation, Brenda and Matt have just opened my eyes to, like, you were talking about classical and jazz, the way the you know, the sort of marketing works there. You were talking about Americana and how like the CDs still go into like promo and stuff. It's like everything's moving at different paces. You know what I mean? Like, and kind of moving like out from the middle. So like, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting. Good spread of people here today.
Yeah. And I was like, Dale brings up a good point. Like, as soon as Matt started talking about his band, I wanted, and I'm sure it'll come up later, but my first question was like, how do you stand out as like a country folk artist in Texas? Or like, I know that's probably like kind of shady of me to say, but like, how do you do that when there's, I imagine, a lot of similar style bands, right?
Yeah, it's strange because it's almost like for a while, and I think even now it's cool to be like everybody else. Like there's kind of this cutter thing in Texas where like it's the hat, it's the belt buckle, it's a
sure.
And we never really fit into that. Even when we tried to, we didn't really do that great of a job of doing that. And so we always felt like we didn't have a home until we learned about the Americana format, and it was becoming more popular in Texas. And but we've always done our best to hang our hat on songwriting. Me and Justin have always felt like if we can write a really good song, that people are going to pay attention to that. And we've gotten some notoriety from that, but at the end of the day, you mentioned the live show. Like, if you're not going to go out there and put your best foot forward in a live show, then you're not going to garner the respect of your peers, and then you just won't get talked about in a way that catches any kind of fire.
I think also, like, we have this idea that you have to have millions and millions of fans in order to be successful, be sustainable, but you really only need like a core group of people that like really support you. Have like 500 to 1,000 fans, and they're going to support you no matter what. That can be sustainable. Like, my boyfriend plays with a band called American Aquarium, which I had never even heard of before, but they like sell out stadiums and make enough money to pay 5 musicians full-time salaries for the whole year.
Wow.
And I never heard of this in my life. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's the other thing. It's just like longevity and keeping to doing what you're doing, and then like just building your core group of people that will follow you. That's the way to do it.
All about American Aquarium here.
You know, I know you probably know all about it.
I'll DJ and the crew that like we want to go on tour with them eventually.
Hook it up, Brenda. Let's go. I'll be their merch guy. Let's do it.
Really strange that for like, because we went to tour the States for the first time last year properly. And it's like weird for me because to us it's like the land of the milk and honey. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like there's loads of genres and like whole areas, and like they said, you could have an amazingly sustained fan base down the East Coast, or just down the West, or like just in Texas or whatever. That's just not possible in Europe at all.
Really?
It's not possible. Yeah, it's like it's so dense and so so competitive that it's hard to build that. Do you know what I mean? It's like a different thing. Like and that's not just any genre, that's just like genres in general. It's like it's just a different live scene, you know.
Yeah.
Everything's free.
That's interesting. I never
so we
looked
always
at it
see
that way.
and that's Canada as well. Like all of it, we're like, whoa, this is amazing. There's so many. There's just more people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
spread out.
like
Very spread out.
We're everywhere.
Like, do you know what I mean? So it's like it's a bigger market. So it's like you could go and, you know, some of our favorite bands that we think are like massive over here are like nowhere. Like we go down when we might be bigger. Some of the bands that like dwarf us back home, you know, or whatever. And that'd be the same, I'm sure, with a lot of North American artists coming to Europe as well, and other parts of the world have a completely different sort of footing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think everyone, just like everyone and their grandma's in a band in America. I think
Right.
It's very
it's
true.
literally like everyone is in a band of some kind. So like it works in positive ways in the sense that there's always like something new going on, or like someone new to check out, or well, back when shows could happen, like there are always shows happening. But because there's so many people in bands, it's so difficult to stand out. And like, I mean, I don't know. Like I've played in bands that sound like bands that are really popular and no one gives a shit about us, and then I've been in bands that play music that no one cares about and people dig it. So
People love them. Yeah.
it's really weird. But yeah, I didn't know Europe was so.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's so
it's different,
interesting.
Yeah. Well, and
different place.
and I think that comes right back around to what Brenda was saying earlier, was about like finding that core group of people, because it's very true. Like you don't have to have a million people loving you, or even if you are like a small band in like in a small town somewhere, like if you have that core group of like 100 people who are going to come back and buy your CD every single time, they're going to come to every single show, they're going to stream your stuff on Spotify, they're going to share your stuff on their Instagram, they're going to share all of your stuff, they're going to tell all their friends. Those people are almost more valuable to you as an artist than having 10,000, 10 million followers on Instagram, but you only get like 10 likes on each post, which that's a bit of an extreme example, but you know what I mean?
But that happens. That's like a legitimate thing that, I've seen, because I've had friends like pay for likes and shit. Like, don't get me wrong, like pay for follows. And like you go to their page and you're like, holy shit, like why do so many people like this? And then you look at their like engagements or like their interactions. And it's all just like robots, and it's interesting. Because like
the musicians can smell it, can't you? You can smell
it.
It's so funny, isn't
You're like,
it?
what's going on here, bud? Like,
get in here, babe.
A million views on your YouTube video.
Yeah, that's so funny. And you notice that everyone's from Brazil, and you're like, that's strange.
Big in Brazil.
How'd you get so popular there?
Strange.
It's like just in numbers, like so to go to number one in the UK album chart is anywhere from 17,000 to 20,000 units. So that's a lot smaller than the American market. So that shows if you took like your fan base that you could grow in like the Midwest or something and just plonked it in UK, you'd be like number one.
Yeah, you'd be perfect.
So it shows you the ratio of how things are. Do you know what I mean? So it's like a different ratio.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are, but like you say, we noticed that everyone and their nans in the bloody band, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, it's good, really good high level of musicianship is amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like in the UK, it's like more of a statement to stand out and try to be different to get heard, if you know what I mean. But in America, like the American market, we found really like preserved and appreciate musicianship and like your craft if you're really, really like strong or something. That's also different. Compared to back home, like you could be like honestly a dog shit band, but like if you've got this great like idea and this good statement and a bit, and it's still art, I guess, and how you want to be creative about how you put yourself out there. If you've got that, and they come up and then they go straight back down again, and they never stay. The longevity you're talking about, Brendan, you know? So it seems more possible. Where you guys are.
Absolutely. I want to move on to a different kind of area, but I want to know who are your artists or bands that you guys look up to that you think release albums or singles or EPs really, really well, and you kind of, if you will, like model yourself after that band. For me, I'll start off. It's Taylor Swift, because she has this incredible business team. She has this incredible marketing team, and she's so clever with the things she does, and that's why she's still so popular. So I'm curious to know in your guys' genres, because Marissa and I are in that pop genre. Maybe Brenda, in your genre, is there anyone you look up to that you think releases music really well?
I followed this girl named Somi, who is a jazz singer out of New York, and she's been recognized and done some cool stuff, but isn't like a household name or anything. But I kind of studied the way that she put out her record, just because the amount of press she was able to get, and the amount of like prestige that came along. I think in jazz, it's kind of like the more cosigns you get, like this person is good, is how you get ahead, more so than, it's very kind of like elitist a little bit in jazz. So I feel like if you get those cosigns, it works better for you. So I kind of followed her model, and I did a lot of the documenting of making of the record, and spent a lot of time focusing my content on the band members and how we actually created it, why we created it, the kind of chords we played and why we played them, and what kinds of, just more like technical talk of music. I don't think that works with everything, but I think with that specific record that we did, it was the way to go. And I modeled it after SoMe. But then I hired out a radio company and a PR company, so I didn't do all of it myself. But also I looked to see like what other artists were using for their radio companies that were similar to me, what PR companies they were using, who were their labels, and I did a lot of research before I even sought out to do the record. So
sensible. It's very sensible. I'd say.
I think that's a really good way of just trying to go about it, and like a really, I guess like a really sensible way, like you said, Dale. That's really cool. I like that.
We were like definitely a disconnection with like the people I appreciate or look up to, or my current or peers. I like one of my favorite bands is a band called King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. They're from Australia. They did like Red Rocks recently. So for us as a non-American band to go do Red Rock, they do like marathon long sets and stuff, which is music that I kind of secretly pine to want to be able to do. But in the label we're in the format we're in, we have to like bring everything to bite-sized, more commercial chunks. So I kind of often find getting influence from people like more far out left or more like the outer reaches of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then wanting to like be able to like sort of live through them and kind of like try to have that element, you know, try to, because it's quite easy if you start getting into like making music with a slightly more commercial group of people to like just be boxed into something really quite traditional that won't actually necessarily stand out or like even do well because of that. Especially in rock music, it's like an old tried and tested, you know, genre, you know. So it's like I think that I like to look to people who are even more obscure sometimes and be like, whoa, that's a great idea. That actually gets me excited. We can never do that. Like, I love the fact that you're doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that sort of thing. For us, really.
Yeah. Marissa, let's move on to our next question. We did lose Market Junction, but we're going to get him back in. I think something just went on with his Zoom, so we're going to get him back in the chat. But let's move right along to our next question here.
Yeah. I wanted to know for you guys, if you had to choose between, this is kind of a hard would you rather question, but bear with me. If you had to choose between never being able to release music or never being able to play live music again, which would you choose and why?
Easy, definitely. Never. I have to play live.
Yeah.
The other one,
I have to play live too.
Yeah, I'd say never release music and just I have to play live. That's when you actually get to connect with people. That's when it's fun. That's when you're on stage and like spontaneous things happen. In the studio, I think it can be so much like about perfection sometimes, but on stage it's just more about being in the moment and having fun, and it evolves and it changes every day. So I don't know. I think that's way more fun for me.
Yeah. Honestly, I agree. I like there's nothing else that can compare to playing live, and like the kind of energy that you create in the room playing live. You just don't get that from an album. Like sometimes you do, but I 100% agree.
I don't know about anyone else, but like recording was just something we had to do at the start to get a gig. It was like, I want to go play. Yeah, it's like, okay, so you got to get a recorder. Like, okay, well, what's this then? Microphone? Okay, cool. So like, it wasn't like the thing like, oh, I want to make sonic art, man. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was literally, like, I just got to get a recorder. I was this guy on the pub and let's play. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was definitely wasn't like the first thing that thought, but there is an art and there's great stuff to be added in it, right?
I think, you know, I've been in, you know, bands that pretty much solely play live, and I've been in bands that pretty much solely are in the studio, you know, like those kinds of projects. And being up there and like doing your thing is way more fun than like releasing music, because I feel like releasing music and being in the studio and like that's all like the stressful businessy like
Yeah.
that's when you have to kind of use that other part of your brain to be a little bit more like critical and a little bit more like insightful as to like how the process itself is going. But when you're on stage, it's just like, let's just go for broke and just kind of see what goes down. And
Absolutely.
live for sure.
Yeah. Actually, we got a question from Reddit here from Ditta323 asked, can you have a normal life or family when you have to be on the road so much?
God,
I mean,
don't even get me. All right, I've written so many songs about that.
So the answer is no.
I think we struck a nerve with Dale. He's
Remember what they call like Ditto? Who are they? Ditto 4-3 with us? Like, are you like in the next room to me? You're like, you in my head. Like, what's going on with that? What are you up to?
Oh no!
Someone's spying. Someone's in this Zoom chat. I bet it's Matt, isn't it? Matt's just gone like, he's just left the Zoom.
He hopped on
Reddit account.
Matt hopped on Reddit. That's so funny.
That's hilarious.
Damn. Well, I think we should let Dale take it away on this one.
No. Do you know what? I long for that. I'm so split. I'm really, really split with stuff. Like I long for it so much. Like me and my girlfriend, we've got like this lockdown's been amazing because we've been able to like we've got allotment, which is like a sort of like a communal garden thing and stuff like that. Just the opposite. I just want to sit in a chair, drink beer, watch my carrots grow, and just like, do you know what I mean? Like I literally don't want to do the opposite. I think like a lot of people I think there are a lot of musicians that they want all of it at the same time. Don't you? Want all of it at the same time. So you just want to be like step out of this room, like, oh yes, here I am. You know, like I'm Madison Square Gardens, lovely. Do you know what I mean? And then just step back into their own like comfies, but it just don't work, does it? Like in the same ways that we toured with a band last summer in the States, and they really had figured that out. They're like a bigger arena sort of amphitheater band, and they've really had to hone it over years. And I know for a fact that they had a good chunk of their career which wasn't very good in that respect, so it's tough. But cry me a river, eh? Whatever.
It's true. It's very true.
Well, Brenda, you were also kind of mentioning before, you were saying that you think it's possible to kind of have a relationship, family while you're on the road. Can you expand a little bit on that?
I think people might hate me for saying this, but I think it works if both people are artists. Because we have two children, and I think it takes like a great deal of understanding like an artist's schedule and knowing like sometimes you need to be left alone and not be able to have the kids. And it's not that you don't want to help, but it's literally like you can't work or create if you don't have time. So having another artist involved in a relationship, I think has an understanding of that more so than a person that's not an artist. So I think two artists raising children or having a family together works. It works for us. Though, being in quarantine, this is like the most time we've all been home in the same place together. But our children perform too. So it's like on any given day, Red's doing a show, I'm doing a show, the kids are in a rehearsal, and we all just have an understanding. It all just works out. But I definitely have seen it not work in usually situations where one person is not an artist because they don't understand the life.
Right.
So
we have this running joke between like a bunch of my homies and I, because we all like are either like bartenders, servers, whatever. So like we work nights, and we always joke around about like you can't date normies because they'll never understand. They'll never understand your night schedule. And I think like anytime that you're a part of a specific like lifestyle where you're not doing the 9 to 5, you're not, on that sort of like commute to work grind, it definitely does take like a special like other person to understand that. And I've definitely been in relationships with people where they did not get it. And it made like being on tour like a fucking nightmare. And it was really hard, and like being on tour is already hard enough as it is, trying to like keep yourself fed and hydrated. And I think Brendan is definitely onto something with like they either need to be a part of that particular scene or lifestyle or whatever, or they just have to downright be like the most understanding person on the planet, which neither are mutually exclusive.
One thing, would you say that you guys have, this is a bit sour, but have you ever had like bereavement when you've been on the road? Because that's really tough. Like, especially if you're like us in another country, had like a bereavement, someone passed away, like you'd known like whatever, you won't be able to be close Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely want to die while you're on the tour, which is really, really sad. But for us, we're always in another country, so I can never get. It's not as easy just to get back to. Does that make sense? And that gives me really bad guilt, because then I felt like I was being really selfish touring.
Yeah.
And something like that happens. It's quite dark, but sorry. Anyway,
but even things like family reunions or grandma's birthday or stuff like that, for sure. My original family were from Wisconsin. I honestly haven't been able to go back home in like 4 years, just because work, like I haven't been able to take the time off. So I mean, that makes it super sad that you miss out on those kinds of things. But on the flip side, it's like your family's super proud of you, and
that one,
right.
Yeah,
they understand. They know it would be different if we were out here, like, hanging in the clubs, drinking it up.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, as a touring artist, and your work is kind of your life as well. Like, it's the two are kind of very hand in hand, and it's not just work, it's a lifestyle. So it's always tough. And I think, like, having a family that's very understanding is super helpful. I know, like, with me, my family's very understanding. If I tell them I'm going, or even my brother, I live with my brother in this big house. I tell him that I need to stream every single day, and he's just like, okay, fine, what time, just so I know when to be quiet. Like, it's one of those things. And it's always helpful to have somebody in your life who understands that lifestyle, and who understands that you're trying to be present as much as you can. But absolutely, Dale, like you mentioned, it's always tough, because you want to be there for people, and you want to be able to come back and see those people, but sometimes it's just not always possible. And that's the crappy thing about being on the road and stuff. So I totally get that.
I think
my second daughter, we're not together anymore, but her father wasn't even there for her birth because he was on the road. But
there you go.
Wow.
That's
he didn't even meet her
That's
until
so heavy.
Yeah, she was 3 weeks old when he finally got to meet her. But I mean, telling someone else that, they'd be like, "What? That's insane!" But I'm like,
artists are like, "Yeah, we get it."
We're like, "Yeah, it's fine." No, and I think Brenda brought up a really good point, and like Dale did too, where, like, being a musician isn't just like the playing shows and recording. It's like the writing process. It's the, like, needing to be in a certain space in order to, like, create what it is that you do. So it's like, you sometimes you need to be holed up in a room for hours on end, like with the guitar, and like
such a good point, by the way.
That's part of the process. So I think Brenda hit that, like, right out of the park, where it's like, yeah, you need to leave me alone for, like, a little bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean
about anyone else,
it's like
you
a hard,
guys, sorry, you guys are all talking about, like, managers and stuff. I can never explain to my partner, who I've been with like 10 years anyway, or like my family. They're like, "Why are you, like, at 10 o'clock having a call with someone in the States?" Like, you know what I mean? Or whatever, like, or this or that. And they're like,
that's so true.
So you're, like, in the same room, but, like, you're working. Does that make sense? That's so hard to quantify, because they just think, like, "Oh, you're playing guitar, playing music," or like, there's all the other work, like the boring stuff. Like, doing all the other boring stuff.
Yeah.
And that they're like, what? You're like, not, you're here, but you're not really here. I was like, that's like what's really hard.
Yeah,
that's really,
and that's such a hard. It's like communicating it between us, like, it's super easy because we all get it, but like trying to communicate that to, like, another person, we're like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know it doesn't, but like Dale said, you want to have all of it at the same time. So you, like, want to be able to go to your rehearsal space, and then you want to walk out of that room right into, sitting down and watching your carrots grow.
Yeah.
But it's never quite that easy, and like everything does have to be, like, compartmentalized and, like, in its own little lane, which is stressful and difficult to communicate to people.
Yeah, completely fair point. But I mean, tis the life of a musician.
Yes.
That's how we roll. That's how we live. And if you can't handle it, well, then I'll write a song about you. Okay, will that make you happy if I spend these 10 hours? The song is about you.
I'll be spending the rest of the call crying in the corner. So if you need me, I'll be weeping.
That's where I shall be. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. That was actually our last question. We're out of time for today,
Cool.
but we're so lucky to have had everyone on. If you guys are at home watching this roundtable with Vienna Whyte on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you can be notified about our shows. We post shows every single day on YouTube, so make sure you're checking it out. If you want to hear this conversation through podcast form, just search up on Spotify, Vienna Whyte Podcast. So my name is Millie Rouge. I'm your host, and thank you to Marissa for being the co-host on the show today. Marissa, where can you find our band on the internet?
On the internet, you can find us at viennawhyte.com. Vienna like the city, White spelled with a Y because we're trendy. .com, or on Instagram at Vienna Whyte. That's where we post kind of all of our stuff.
Perfect. So we're going to get everyone to once again state their band name and the social media of where we can find you. So Dale, can you sign yourself out?
Dale from Broken Hands. Just find us on Insta or whatever. Well, we don't have TikTok yet, so you can't find us there.
Perfect. And Brenda, can you sign yourself out?